The Honourable Leader for the New Democratic Party.
Last week, Mr. Speaker, Statistics Canada reported that median incomes in Nova Scotia are the lowest, 10th out of 10, dead last in the entire country. Now, last month, I heard the Premier in his State of the Province comments say that, in his view, we are economically on the right path, the right road in Nova Scotia. So I want to simply ask the Premier, how can a province possibly be on the right economic road when it has, as we have, the lowest incomes in the entire country?
The Honourable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. We've continued to make investments, Mr. Speaker, those most vulnerable in our populations, when we ensure we're leaving more money in the pockets of low-income Nova Scotians by adjusting basic personal exemption, weighted heavily for those who need the support the most. Continue to make transformational change that's going to take place in income assistance, Mr. Speaker. At the same time, working with the private sector employers to ensure that university and community college graduates get their first job opportunity in this province. We're supporting that in wage support. Continuing to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that we continue to grow the private sector in the province. Continue to make sure at the same time we're investing in public services. He would know we've had a substantial number of increases in the public sector wage sector that we believe were affordable, but yet they were still being increased. All of those, Mr. Speaker, will take time to continue to allow the economy of the province to grow. And I look forward to continuing to see more people choose to stay and live and work in Nova Scotia.
The Honourable Leader of the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, what the Premier is failing to square up to in this response is the government's comparative economic performance. So since the current government began its mandate, median incomes across Canada have risen by 6%. But in this same period, median incomes have risen in Nova Scotia by 0%, 0.2%. So I want to ask the Premier, does he not register some sense of dismay or register some sense of alarm that Canadians in the rest of the country outside of Nova Scotia have seen income increases fare 30 times greater than ours have been in the period that the Liberals have been in power?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. As he would know, Mr. Speaker, there's been many challenges facing this province. There's been structural challenges for successive decades when it comes to delivering services in Nova Scotia. We've been outstripping our growth to continue to deliver those services. We had some difficult decisions to make when we came into power, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that we were being able to pay as we go. Mr. Speaker, we are seeing positive signs in the incomes of Nova Scotians. We're also very encouraged by the fact that, Mr. Speaker, we're starting to see that all-important cohort of 18 to 34-year-old population starting to grow in Nova Scotia's third consecutive year. We've retained more young people than we've lost. All of that, Mr. Speaker, they recognize that this province is moving in the right direction, that we continue to see that growth, and they want to be part of it, and they want to live here. Not only do they want to work here, Mr. Speaker, they want to live and raise their families here.
The Honourable Leader of the New Democratic Party on his final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the Premier has cited a great many different considerations, but none of these considerations changes the fact that incomes in Nova Scotia are as flat today as yesterday's Shrove Tuesday pancakes. Now look, the Conference Board of Canada has identified weak consumer demand as a key thing inhibiting economic growth in this province. So I want to ask the Premier, how are we going to improve consumer demand when we've got the lowest incomes in Canada?
The Honourable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. Mr. Speaker, he would know if he looks forward, Mr. Speaker, the wage growth in this province is keeping pace with the national agenda, Mr. Speaker. He would also know when he uses a national number, there are certain provinces through resource development, Mr. Speaker, that have seen huge growth. We have seen, quite frankly, a record year when it comes to exporting opportunities and getting the proper price for our products, Mr. Speaker, for after successive decades. When people would continue to sole source one market, Mr. Speaker, take $5 a pound for lobster in December was unacceptable to us. We came to power. All of that growth in the price of lobsters turning around, being spun around, and deckhands, Mr. Speaker, fish operators, those are all positive signs. But I want to tell the honourable member, it takes time to continue to move this province out of the direction it had been going under successive governments in this now positive way in the direction that allows us, Mr. Speaker, to not only see a future of those of us that live here, but we see young people, Mr. Speaker, who are really showing the real confidence, Mr. Speaker, by choosing to live, stay, and work here.